All right, guys, so we're back, and we're going to go ahead and get into the second part of this. I'm going to try and get this edited down so that it's a lot more concise and short, since the first one was almost an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and pretty much get right into it. Got everything dyed, and we're going to get going. We are finally on the next day. I feel like in the edit I probably deleted a lot of, because I edited yesterday's footage a lot, heavily, you might say, of what I was doing yesterday, because a lot of it was just rambling unnecessarily. So we can finally bevel this piece here. We're just going to get to it, because now that I have edited that video, I know how much of that is completely and wholly unnecessary. Come on now. Maybe that's not beveling poorly just because it was wet last night, but just because it don't want to bevel nicely. And I'm pretty sure that yesterday I said I was going to sand this down. I mean, I might, but it's not a guarantee at this point, so come on now. This isn't biting at all. What's going on? It's weird. There we go. Maybe it's just because it's coming. Maybe it's a rough cut, and that's why. We're going to do it from the other side, too. There we go. Now we're getting some shavings off of this side. Usually when you bevel, it goes a little bit nicer than this. It's kind of one of the satisfying areas of leather work usually, but this one doesn't necessarily want to agree. That's okay. Also, I realized last night when I was editing how incredibly ADD I was, because, man, did I start a lot of sentences without... Okay, I am recording. All right, I was a little bit worried for 1 second there. All right. Did you guys catch that? I could not believe when I was going through the edit. The only reason I even left that audio in there is because in the middle of a sentence where I'm talking about how I realized while I was doing the edit from the last video about how bad I am about starting a sentence and then just completely not finishing the sentence, because of my ADD. In the sentence where I'm explaining that, I stopped completing the sentence. I couldn't believe it. So I found that a little bit funny. I figured I'd leave it in there for you guys. So ultimately what I'm doing here is I'm just going to go ahead and get this lined up. I'm going to take a Sharpie here and just draw a little rough outline around, just so that I can take a look at where the wet form edges are in relation to where I'm going to have the seam at, just to make sure we're not getting too closer. Just that we're evenly spaced essentially on the piece from the underside portion. It'll just help me. And oh, look at that. I ended up using my gloves this time, which is nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of stain there on the final part. And look at that. Got some stain on the gloves already, so I'm glad I put them on. So now we're going to go ahead and burnish the edges on the scallops. So we have our burnishing tool, which today I can remember what it is because I went back through and edited yesterday's video where I forgot what it was called twice. And what I like to use is just a small scrap of leather for applying the burnishing. I don't want to call it burnishing lotion, but burnishing lotion is probably not correct, but burnishing gum. That's probably like that, right? Yeah, okay. Burnishing gum. Disregard the stains. This leather dye gets on friggin' everything, man. So let's go ahead. Look at that. Lovely, almost like I intended on knocking that off. What I like to do for this is just go ahead and just run a little bit along there with just a scrap of leather. This is something that I'm probably going to fast forward through. I don't know. I suppose we'll see. But time is at a minimum here. When I edited everything today, it was at around, what was that, 57 minutes before I started recording today, and I was like, good God. And that was with cutting a couple things and fast forwarding through. I mean, you guys saw the video if you've made it this far. You can see exactly how much I fast forwarded through, and you can't tell how much I cut, but I cut some and then fast forwarded through a bunch. Well, we're going to fast forward through a bunch more here. So just finishing up putting the burnishing gum on. Then I'm going to start using the burnishing tool there after I let it dry for a second. And what you want to do in tight areas like this, especially on inside rounds, is you want to be spinning the burnishing tool a little bit as you're going and moving it along the actual edge. That's because you want to create friction on the edge. That's what creates the nice burnished finished edge. And so then we're going to go ahead and start figuring out how we're going to lay this out. And what I did on the last speed up that I did not necessarily mention was that I used the stitching chisel to set our stitching marks there along that middle seam. And so we are going to go ahead and start talking about that now. So one thing I did realize was that I am going to, in order for this, front, I'm going to have to stitch all the way around here, even though there's not a seam right here. It's, obviously attached. But I'm going to have a stitch seam all the way around, because I have to have a stitch seam all the way around this. And I could get away without doing it. I could do it like that. But I do have to have at least a stitch seam here, and it would look weird to have a stitch seam go from here to here and then stop, and then pick up here and go from here to here and stop. And it would also be a hassle for lining up all the holes on this side to this side. It's more work than it's worth to try and do that to prevent a stitch through here. I don't know. But that's how I'm going to do it. All right. So we're going to call that right there good. Again, it's not, I feel like I edited out the number of times yesterday where I said, it doesn't got to be perfect. It can just be what you want it to be or whatever. But, you should try and make it as close to perfect as possible. I do try to make it as close to perfect as possible. I just also, while I'm doing that, say, oh, it doesn't got to be perfect, but the button that I installed prior to when I should have done it is becoming an issue here. So, all right, so we're just going to start our chisel line here for our stitching. We're just going to drop that first one. After we get that set, we're going to use a little square just to drop down the line so we have a nice straight line to go off of, keep everything nice and centered and looking good. And once we get that going, I will start chiseling in the rest of the marks, and you will see that I use another one of my chisels to try to pull out the main chisel that I'm using. That's just to keep the leather from deforming while I am trying to pull it out, because it'll want to pull out the edge that you're levering up on more than the other side. So we're just going to start stitching here. You'll see I pulled out the glue there. I'm not using glue on this project. A lot of times I would use glue, but on this one, I'm just not going to. I don't want to get a bunch of gunk in there. And I use the awl to poke out or stretch out each hole. It just makes putting the needle into each hole a little bit easier. I'm using a single needle. I'm doing a saddle stitch style stitch, going back and forth through each hole and opposite ways. But instead of using an actual, two needle method, which a lot of times is what I use, I don't want to have to clamp this up because of the wet molded leather. We just make it a little bit more of I don't want to crush the work that I, worked hard to, get nice. So I'm just going to go all the way down through, weaving through one side, and then I'll just come back through the other side. You run a little bit of an issue possibly of running your needle through your thread, but it's honestly not the end of the world if you do that. Try to avoid running the needle through the thread when you're coming back through the hole, but if you do, it's not going to be the end of the world. So we'll come back and we'll see what we're going to do here as far as the rest of the stitching is concerned. All right, so I'm probably going to stop the time lapse there and talk here for a second. So Normally, if this was a seam that was visible from both sides, like the only, well, let me just one of my wallets here. If this was one of my wallets here, I want to have visible stitches between every single hole, both this way and that way. And since both sides are visible, I have to go back through a hole multiple times. Like if both sides of this were visible, I'd have to go back through that hole there and pull out there, and then go back through the second hole probably again and pull it out on the less likely to be seen side, and then have both of these essentially here also, but I'd have to go back through that again. Since this is going to be inside of the pouch, I don't have to do that. Also, you should not pull your stitches too tight. I feel like that's something that happens sometimes when you're stitching, hand stitching leather. You can really, especially if you're double using 2 needles and doing a saddle stitch, I mean, you can really reef each time on both ends of the thread. But what you end up doing is you end up pulling the actual thread here down kind of into the leather, and it almost disappears into the leather, and you can't see the stitching. And that's not what I'm looking for here. So, oops, oh, I lose my needle. So I pulled it tight, but not so tight. So we have that stitched there, and then I'm going to cut that there, and just use where's my little lighter? Where'd you get off to, you old sucker? Oh, there it is. So for the one that is just a loose end thread, I'm just going to boil that down until it is... there we go. Come on. All right, you see the leather dye in my hand from yesterday? Still there. Okay. So I'm just going to burn that one down. This one here I'm actually going to set in just a little bit with the same tapered punch that I had used yesterday, if I can find it, which God knows whether or not that's the case. You know what? I stuck it in here. The reason I knew I stuck it in there is because this piece should have been in there, but it's not, which means I stuck that piece in there. I'm going to use my little tapered ball end. You probably can't see that, but it's got a little ball on the end. It's nice for pushing threads, and I'm going to actually set this butcher's knot down into the leather. Just I'm going to force it in. Oh, got the end of that ball knot stuck on there. I'm just going to push the whole thing down in there as best as I can, and then fray up those edges a little bit, and then burn them. I just don't want them to be as prevalent as they would have been otherwise. Okay. So now we have that. All right, that piece is now permanently affixed. And now it'll make it a little bit easier. I gotta keep this straight here. So, time to start. So we're gonna punch down through multiple layers here. And for this, I'm not going to be able to use my a little bit further over today. I've got a little notcher that this tool here that has a little hole in it here. It's actually a cutting edge, and what that does is you can run along this point here runs along the seam, and you can use that like that to cut a really nice actually notch in here that sets the seams of the stitching down into the actual leather. But because I don't have a nice clean edge here yet, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm just gonna go at it, and we're just gonna make it work.
Honestly, I could have used the grooving tool if all I did was use a little bit of glue and set the line where I want it to be and clamped it up and let it sit overnight. I I was impatient while doing this. I wanted to try to get it done in 2 nights because I had an opportunity to get everything recorded quickly. If I was doing it again, I would glue it up and then I would cut it off, and then I would use the grooving tool to do the stitching edge around the outside. It just sets the seam in, makes it much less likely to wear through. So I'm just going to go ahead and flip it over, and I'm doing it from this side opposed to the other side so that I can see exactly where the leather overhang is at. I know that the actual piece of the wet molded leather is affixed in the right orientation. So now it's just about essentially making sure that I have enough overhang and I punch down through the leather in the right spot. So I can do it from the other side because I know where that edge is at. And the other edge of the wet molded leather is malleable as far as pushing and pulling, and I can manipulate that a little bit better than I can do the harder flat edge. So I'm just going to go ahead, and as I'm stitching here, you'll see that as I'm banging in the chisel line, you'll notice that I'm also doing like a really ugly rough stitch. That's essentially just to hold the leather in place, the wet molded piece of leather in place as I go, so that it's not, because it wants to kind of fold out. I don't know if a good analogy to explain it, but it kind of wants to push flat a little bit, and I kind of want it to pucker up a little bit and be a little bit more rounded up, or I don't know how to describe it, but so I'm just using these stitches just to keep my stitch lines in the same place, and so that they don't go all catawampus and off track. I want the final finished product to have nice straight stitch seams on both sides, and so I'm just putting that in just as a placeholder essentially as I go around through here. And then we are going to, once we get those all set in there, and this again would be something that I wouldn't have to do. You wouldn't have to do this whole like rough stitching thing if I had just set the edge of it with some contact cement or some type of adhesive just to hold it in place. And so there I use the square. I'm just going to square across just to make sure that I'm ending both, my start and my finish point on both sides at the right spot. And I don't want to eyeball it. I want it to look nice. So I'm just doing a rough fit there with my stuff, make sure everything feels good. And then I'm going to pull out those stitches. I'm going to pull them out as I go. I'm not going to pull them out all at once because, again, I want everything to stay nice and lined up and tight. So I'm just going to get a nice long piece of thread. Again, the thread's cheap, so just take as much as you need because you don't want to have to splice it in after. And so I used a knot at the end. At the very end of the string. That's just to keep it from pulling through. And then I'm just going through, same thing as I did on the down, or the middle seam there that goes down. I went all the way around, doing like an S weave with the thread, from one edge to the other edge. And then I'm just going to turn around and do the exact opposite on the other way back around. It's simple. If there are much better tutorials out there. I'm fast forwarding as fast as I possibly can through this part of it. This is not a tutorial on hand stitching leather. There are many other much better videos on it. Maybe at some point I will do a tutorial on it, but probably not, because if you're thinking about doing leather work, you probably have seen other videos on it, and it's just not necessary. So just, I don't know what I'm talking about there. But I will probably hear, let's just play a little bit of music or something just to fill the time here, just because I got to get going around the outside. And, I don't know, am I getting close here to being done? Anyway, there's probably not enough time left here to make it worth putting some music in here. But I appreciate you guys watching this far, and I do plan on making videos for this kind of content semi-regularly, and when I do that, I will make sure that in future episodes or editions or videos, projects, whatever you want to call it, things will be much more concise, because it does make it a lot easier for me also with the editing process when I don't have to do a bunch of this crap in between. So, all right, looks like we're wrapping up here. We're going to go ahead and get a look at what's going on and figure out what the next step is.
This is pretty close to the finish. Put that in with the toggle switch down would be the better idea, so I don't turn it on unnecessarily. But we got the stitch pretty well done here. Got a nice pocket here. I gotta nip that edge off of both sides so that it's not so floppy. I want to get it tighter to that. that seam there. And I have the allowance here to make that happen, so I'm going to. And then once I do that, I am going to trim off the edges that are exposed here, and then I'm going to sand, and we're going pretty close to being done. I mean, it's not going to be too much longer here. I have to burnish some edges, obviously. So let's go ahead and get those edges trimmed off. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because I'm going to be sanding. I'm just lobbing off the excess. Let me go ahead and burn those threads here, not seams, threads. So, my wife was out of town last night, and so in an attempt to, it's kind of funny, I swear I did not plan this way. I've been, the whole reason for me making this pouch is because, why? Because I lost the alpaca gear or whatever pouch that I had that I really liked. That had my other stuff in it. I was making for the SOG terminus for the knife, which is upstairs right now. In this, which the SOG terminus I had lost for a while, right? And I started out this video saying that I hope that my alpaca gear pouch comes back to me here at some point. Not having any idea whether or not it ever would. I was obviously hopeful, but. So my wife was out of town for a little bit, and she came back yesterday, or today actually. But this morning before she came back, I was getting the house ready for her to come back, and I was changing the bed, and I found my alpaca gear pouch, my EDC pouch that I've been carrying every day with me, my titanium pry bar and the Rat 2 D2. So I will probably carry this because let's see how this fits in there. See, that fits in there really nice too. So I built it for the terminus, but that fits in there really nicely actually. Let's see if it fits in that way with the pocket clip. Yeah. Although I don't want to mar it up with the pocket clip. I don't necessarily love pocket clips. I use them very occasionally, but anyway. So I am going to, I don't know. I'll probably keep using this. I'll swap them in and out. They're really nice. Very durable, and they have 3 outside pockets, a couple inside pockets. And you know what the nice thing is? They're slidey. They slide in and out of the pocket easily, which is probably how I lost it in the first friggin' place. But anyways, all right, I'm going to grind down these edges here. I might do that off camera, just because my grinder is not right here, and it would be a hard thing to get going. So I'll probably grind this down off of camera and then bring it back and show you. You guys know how to use a belt sander. Hopefully, anyway. And then we'll stain, bevel, burnish, and call it a day. All right. Okay. All right. So, got this pretty well sanded down. Again, this edge here, I don't really want to take it all the way down to the bare. I probably could have, but I'm not going to take it down to expose the bare raw hide of the folded over seam. I just took it down flush with that, and I just brought these edges all together flush. So we got to go ahead and bevel everything again. Again, I mentioned before, duplicating effort. That seems pretty good there. So obviously it's mostly going to be this edge here because this is the edge that was not already beveled and the edge that got most of the sanding. That's satisfying when you get a nice piece like that comes off. When you grind leather on a belt sander, it kind of, you know, like if this is the edge here, it kind of smushes it up and bends it out of the way as it grinds it. So you get a really nice bevelable, is that a word, bevelable? Able to be beveled edge, because it kind of kicks it up and makes it kind of ripe for cutting off. So that's what we see there. That's why we got these nice little pieces here. And that that feels good all the way around. Okay. Hey, guess what we're going to put back on here? Gloves we're going to put them inside out so that actually, we're going to do this one because this one has most of the stain on it. We're not going to make the same mistakes twice, in theory. We're actually going to. Good Lord. You know what the mistake I'm making this time is? Trying to reuse a friggin' glove more than once. It's like trying to be so frugal with the dye that I am not talking about not dyeing leather, you know, saving 25 cents in dye. Not necessary. All right. Oh yeah, look at that, baby. This is going to be a nice little pocket organizer. Who knows? Maybe if this video does well, on account of the fact that I found my pocket organizer in my alpaca gear that I was looking to replace this with, this for. Maybe I will do a giveaway on this. I don't know. Because it's a nice, really nice organizer, honestly. All right. Yeah. It's pretty sharp. It's pretty sharp. So, got some neat's foot oil. I'm gonna go ahead and put onto this after those dry, and then I'm going to. Well, I'll probably burnish the edges first, and then let's see. Yeah, that's a little bit tight having stuff with the stuff in there. It's a little bit tight, but you know what? Again, this stuff I could form out also. I could spritz a little bit of water down if I really, if I had more stuff in there that I wanted to fit other than maybe some flat cash, maybe a backup credit card and like a couple of other small simple things. I could go ahead and spray some water down in there and stick my fingers in there and try to kind of create a similar situation to this, but it would make my pocket more bulky also, which that's already, it's not fat, but it's not thin either, although it's no fatter than this, which makes sense, I suppose. But I'll be honest with you, the pouch on this one, I was a little bit disappointed with the size of it. I thought it was going to be a little bit bigger. Maybe this is the answer I'm looking for. I don't know. I do know that based on the amount of time I put into this video, that it is probably not worth making these to sell, but it did turn out nice. Oh, I got a little bit of seam there. There we go. Ah, good thing. All right. All right. Time to pause this for a second, let that edges dry, and then I will burnish edges, and then do some neat's foot oil. All right. I already started this, but I've showed you. I'm using a dauber on this one because it's a wider seam, and it's going to go faster. And it's late, and my wife is back now, and I'd like to go see her, but I also want to get this video out. So I'm going to do I'm going to paint with a broad brush here. Dangerous, I know, but I'm willing to take the chance of offending people by doing that. All the leather purists out there. There's no leather purists that are still watching this video. They've all left the chat. So I'll be honest with you, I kind of like the dauber way of applying this anyway. It goes a little bit faster, and it's a little bit, I don't know, is it neater? I don't know if it's neater, but it is easier for heckin' sure. Alright. The weather's high. I'm pretty good drinking beer. Pretty good drinking whiskey is what I'm good at. Right, so we're gonna use the middle, second biggest notch here. We're just gonna back and forth. Go ahead and give it, beat the devil out of it, as Bob Ross would say. All right.
Just going to finish up burnishing here. No need to make you guys sit through that as I go. I'm going to go ahead and just run it around the edge just like that. And then I'm going to use the flat part, or like the, I guess flat part, tapered part of the burnishing tool, right, just like that. And kind of smooth down the edges, because when you burnish, sometimes it does want to kick up the outside edge just a scotch. So doing that just kind of brings it down to a nice round. And all right, let's take a look.
I'm gonna call that good. Give you guys a close-up. I'll probably start out the video by doing some close-ups. You know, stitching ain't perfect, especially right there. I'm not sure exactly what the heck happened there, because it doesn't look off on that side. Must be when no, I'm not gonna. I ain't gonna try and hit the angles right before, or this time. I tried before once and it kind of came out a little catawampus. But that's what I was, well, this is exactly what I was picturing. I'm pretty sure that the sketch that I drew of what it was going to look like is long gone. Is this it? That ain't it. Must be this piece. Let's see what, that's pretty doggone close. Let's do this side. It's pretty doggone close. Let's look at the side view. That's pretty doggone close, I'll say. It ain't every day that you don't plan things and they still turn out exactly how you plan, as well as this did, which, you know, I didn't make it for this knife, so that knife falling out, the SOG Terminus is a thicker knife than this, and a wider knife, a more broad knife, but, even still, that's not coming out of there. I could get it to come out, but this is not the knife that I formed this for. And I also don't have anything in the pocket, which is going to press against it. But that's the project, guys. Really appreciate you guys sticking around. If you have stuck around watching it this long, I do plan on pretty soon here starting to sell leather wallets. I have my prototype that I made here that has I don't want to get my card numbers on there, but it's got quick access for your cash that you use all the time, and then the cards that you don't use all the time go in there. This is one for your front pocket carry. This is for ones that are for back pocket carry, just so you don't have the snap on there. That's a little bit uncomfortable to sit on. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like, comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. It really does help me out, especially with my channel. I'm very new to doing this, and so I'm looking to get to 1,000 subscribers. That would be very cool if you could do that. And yeah, I hope that you guys may. If you do make it, please send me a copy of it. Where do I have the ability for you to do that? There will be a link in the description of the video, maybe. If not, make a YouTube video and put my name in the comments, and I'll look for them. But it's a fun project. It's a nice project. It really does fit in your pocket nice. You can even stick it in your front pocket like that. But then your wife will call it a pocket protector, like my wife calls my EDC pouch pocket protector. It's a pocket organizer. Anyway, I am ranting again like I always do. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.